Okay, Jyles, next to you, I feel short, ugly, and old. I just want to
Okay.
say that. But I'm probably not the only one that would feel that way next to you.
You got two of the three.
Okay.
I won't tell you which two.
Okay. I'm not going to worry about it. All right. So you left a career. Has it been a year and a half ago? How long have you been with this? It all runs together for me.
Well, I started here part-time in January.
Okay.
So I was still teaching in Bangs as a junior high teacher when I started here. And then I finished teaching in May and came on the next day.
Yeah.
Full-time here. So last school year, so about a year ago.
We did something that I haven't heard of a church doing. Is Logan was here and did a lock-in on December 31st, and he officially was off the payroll here at midnight.
Yep.
And you were at that lock-in, and then you were in charge from midnight on.
Midnight to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
It was mine.
So did Logan sleep and like make a mess and just like take advantage of that?
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's
No,
awesome.
Not a bit.
No,
Not a
that's
bit.
good for him. And so you were part-time from January 1 until like May 31st, basically.
Yep.
And then we tricked you. We put on our best behavior in those 6 months, and you agreed to stay on full-time.
Yeah.
And so you had a career that, I mean, I assume you were pretty good at. You were coaching and teaching at Bangs. So why did you leave that to come and hang out with all of us?
Yeah, you're kind of half right. I did love teaching. I
Okay.
was not good at it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was an easy decision. Rusty Rogers was the guy who introduced me to Austin Avenue and to the staff here. And have you ever told Rusty no before?
No.
Me neither.
No.
Yeah, so that's how that started.
He met me in the parking lot, and it was kind of dark, and there's just this huge man, and he's like telling me what to do, and I just said, yes, sir. And,
Yeah.
and I called you that day, I think.
Absolutely. Actually, the first person that ever asked me if I would do youth ministry was my first year of teaching. It was in the fall semester, so I'd barely been teaching for 30 minutes at that point. And I had a 6th grade girl ask me why I wasn't a youth minister, why I was a teacher instead. I don't remember if there was a faith conversation happening kind of in some spare time in class. I have no idea what sparked her to ask this question. But the only answer that I came up with was a youth minister only gets to teach you twice a week, Sundays and Wednesdays, and I get to teach you 5 times a week. And so that's why I was in education for those 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that started off. But if you would have told me when I was 14 that in 10 years you're going to be a youth minister, I don't think I would have been shocked.
Yeah.
The two roles or the two men that I had in my life, both of their roles were teachers or youth ministers. Those were the most influential guys that I had. And I wanted to be an influence one day too. And so those were two natural roles that I was kind of drawn to.
Okay, so talk about that some, because you moved around a lot as a kid, right? Have you
Yeah.
counted up the number of schools that you've been to as a student?
I did. So I didn't count the number of schools I went to.
Okay.
But my mom is a teacher and my dad is a preacher. And so both professions kind of move around a lot. Most people assume that I had military family because I moved so much. Most of the time we'd move to a town, we lived in the parsonage for a few years. And then we'd get a house outside of the city limits where we could keep the horses and things like that. So by the time I was 21, I was in 17 houses.
Wow. Okay, but like
8
the
different
first
schools.
Okay, 8 schools.
Yep.
Okay, so I mean that's like one every 2 years. I mean, actually, it's more than that.
Yeah.
And so the first time I talked to somebody about you, I was doing like the reference call check, and it was actually Doug Johnson. And like he told me, he's like, you don't understand. Like he's all in. He loves the church. He's been trained and brought up by the church. So tell me how you have such deep roots in the local church while moving 16 times, 8 different schools.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I actually paid Doug to say that.
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm glad,
okay. Well,
I'm
it
glad he
works.
followed the script.
Yeah.
Church kind of was my home. I spent a lot of time up at the church building, but really, in a time where I had no consistency in my life, moving so much, friend groups changed a lot of the time. The church was very consistent for me. The Lord was very consistent for me. I wasn't able really to dive into many friend groups, I don't even remember most of the churches that I went to. If I went there today, I wouldn't know anyone. They might know me, but I wouldn't know them. But really, church camp was one of those places for me. Ever since third grade, I was able to go to camp, and I kind of stuck with that same group of guys, those same cabin mates, every year until I was a senior in high school. And the joke was every year when we got to camp, we'd had to introduce ourselves. And they were always betting on where Jyles was from this year. Sometimes I was from a big town, sometimes I was from a little town. But that was really consistent for me. And a lot of those guys are going to be my groomsmen in a few weeks. And so those are the types of consistent relationships that have made me to love the church.
Yeah, I just have goosebumps. Just thinking about like the church was your home. That was your stability. That was kind of the ballast of your ship. And how like, a year ago we were raising money to buy vans to go to camp.
Yeah.
And it's like, on the surface, it's like, okay, you're buying 4 wheels, engine, a bunch of seats. But what you're buying is relationships that are going to be your groomsmen, that are going to be these people that you prayed for, that you've cried with, that you've done pranks with, that Jyles could come out of the other end because we bought vans, right? And so that's just awesome to me.
Yeah. One of the things that came out of that, when I was teaching and I had my Sundays off, every other month I would go and visit a congregation that I used to go to. Some of them were pretty close. I was at Cross Plains or Elliott Street Church of Christ in Breckenridge or Eastside Church of Christ in Graham, and I would go and visit these places. And every time I went there, they would usually recognize me, even if I was there as a little kid. They at least recognized the name. And there would be a bidding war to see who could ask me to go to lunch first. Right? And I would usually take them up on it, right? Especially as a college kid. And so why do I love and value the church? Because the church love and value me first.
Yeah.
They really poured into me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, and we are kind of the church to reap the benefits of all those things that people did for you, to guide you, to teach you, to love you. Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of mentors along the way. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I had such a hard time just picking a few of those guys. Some of them were ones like Doug Johnson.
Yeah.
He was my campus minister when I was at Angelo State University. He was the campus minister for Rams for Christ. But he was my church camp counselor for all of my high school years. And he was teaching a Bible class, him and another guy that's on my list. And they challenged us in a leadership role, not only at the camp, but whatever youth group we went back to or whatever college we were going off to. They set out a challenge for us to be leaders in that. And even if we felt so called to be a youth minister one day. And from that same class of 2 or 3 years worth of high school kids, 4 of us have become youth ministers from that.
Awesome.
It would not be the 4 you would have picked from that class.
It never is.
No, it never is.
I would not have been chosen at camp to be a ministry.
And I doubt I would have been at that time either. Another one of them was Jason Hale. Some of y'all might remember that name. Buck Hale was the involvement minister. Did I get that right? Here in the late 70s, early 80s. And so they kind of have some Austin Avenue roots here. And he and my dad were good friends, and he grew up kind of around this area and knew a lot of the people that I knew, but really took me under his wing in those few years of especially early adolescence.
Yeah. And so you grew up, camp was a big deal.
Yep.
Church was always a big deal. And then you went to Angelo State. And tell us a little bit about the Bible chair there, campus ministry involvement. I still call it a Bible chair. It's
That's the
kind
old
of showing my
name
age.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The campus ministry there, they had a building that was built there in '68, and when I got there, that's a 60-year-old building at that point. I was the class of 2019, so when I got there then, they were doing some renovations on it. So the first entire year of campus ministry, we did not have a place to lay our head. Essentially, right? We didn't have a place to call home, which was normal to me, but not to most other ministries. And so that first year was pretty slim. We didn't have a lot of people, no place to meet. And so I got to be a part of that process of kind of making some decisions, even with the renovation, ones that you would let college students make. Ping pong table versus foosball table, air hockey versus carpet ball, things I've never heard of before. And so I got to be a part of that and even signed the foundation of the new building. And I think y'all have done that just in the last 15 or so years with the auditorium as well. And so I got to be a part of that with the campus ministry there. And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
Just that spring break was my freshman year of college. And so we met on Zoom and online and did what everybody did at that time and played a lot of charades. And then when we came back, it was just the time of my life. And I look back on those years fondly. I soaked up every second that I could there.
Yeah. Those were formative years for me too. Being a state school guy,
Yeah.
campus ministry. I taught a lot of bad lessons at a Bible chair.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, so what's kind of surprised you the most then of coming into ministry full time, being that you've done it for over a year now, or coming up on a year? What's kind of been the biggest shocker to you?
Yeah, that people get paid to do this. Yeah. I pray that all of y'all love y'all's jobs. I've been blessed to have two very fulfilling jobs, both as an educator and as a minister, but I can guarantee you I have the best job in this room. I absolutely love what I do.
Yeah.
It just amazes me that people get paid to do what I do.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. It's pretty
Yeah.
nice. So what's it like coming into a job that's new? And between Tom and I didn't do the math, but it's got to be over 30 years of youth ministry experience.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well,
You're day one, and we're year 30 between us.
for sure. No, y'all are very gracious to me, especially it being your first year. I doubt most of us can say the first time we did anything was the way that we continued to do it. That we look back at the first time we did something and we go, oh, I'm really proud of how that went. Usually not. Usually you adapt and you make some adjustments to it. And that's definitely been the case. But I've been able to avoid a lot of that heartache from having people like you and Tom just right next door. But I made a list. I doubt there's another congregation in Texas, another Church of Christ in the States that have youth ministers like Lance, Tom, Michael McCoy,
Yeah, he's
Jerry
still here.
Leslie. I know Joel Luker does some ministry on Wednesday nights with the Comanche kids. Henry Hogan tells me stories about a time where he filled a need of a church in Oklahoma when he was in his 20s. And I know like Rex and Sherry go to Colorado and do VBS every single summer.
Yeah,
So I have tons of people that I turn to on a regular basis to kind of inform me in my first year of ministry.
Yeah. And we've been careful to try to say, here's a way to do things, but we're going to sit back and let you do it.
Yeah.
And you've done awesome.
Thank you.
So you've been in a lot of congregations. What's some of the quirks of us? What's some things that are like a little bit different here, kind of make us unique?
This might be the first congregation that had red bricks and not yellow bricks.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if yellow was cheaper back in the day or not, but this is one of the first ones that has had red bricks to it.
Okay.
Okay, what was your question again, I suppose?
What's some of the things that are kind of quirky or different that make us unique compared to a lot of the other congregations that you've been a part of?
So before I came here, when the job was offered just as a part-time, I called pretty much everybody on my contact list. Whether they knew of Austin Avenue or not, whether they had ministry experience or not, I called them and I talked to them about it, at least the ones that I respected. And people that have never been here, they all know kind of what Austin Avenue stands for. It's a big deal to Brownwood and to surrounding counties. People know who you are. And a lot of the things I heard, you probably know one of them, missions.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably number one, right? That they are very missions focused in their thing. And then coming here, you kind of expect there's going to be a little bit more to that. And then you get here and there's even more than you thought.
Yeah.
Right? Not just for foreign, but for local as well. And just kind of be a part of that story and to be a part of that reputation has been an honor for me.
Yeah. I was going to say that one, and the ministers don't leave, right?
Right.
I mean, you've mentioned a few.
yeah.
Jerry and Michael and Ted Kill was still here when I got here, and so yeah. There's a lot. They stick around. I lost my place.
Well, I got another one too.
Okay.
This church really understands the youth a lot. So I mentioned some of the people that might have been ministers here, but this list is of people that have careers just with the youth of this county. Right? Lindsey Smith, Brian Harris, Mitch Moore, Jerry Jones, Mike Stegemoller, Tony Truelove, Cheryl Whitley, and Curtis Donkey. And those are just admin in the schools.
Yeah.
Right? Those don't
You can
count.
keep going.
Those don't count staff and other teachers and even janitors, right?
Yeah.
That's just the admin of here. So if that says anything about this, is that Austin Avenue really understands the youth and has dedicated their working careers for the betterment of the students.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so youth ministry is more than dodgeball. A lot of people don't know that.
I didn't.
Yeah. But, I mean, you're planning events, you're doing curriculum, you're teaching classes. You're communicating to parents. You're working with the leadership. You've got a budget. You've got volunteers. What part of that kind of came naturally, and what part are you still kind of working on?
Yeah, ministry in general, you wear a lot of hats, and not just youth ministry or pulpit or associate work, but
And I pull him
everything.
into everything. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
So
there might be a few more hats that you wear here than you do at other churches. But a few things do become natural. Classes, relationships with members and students, generating ideas for programs and organizing trips. Those things kind of came naturally to me. Coaching really helped with that, especially on the communicating and the organization portion of it. But some things did not come very easy to me. Delegating tasks might have been one of them. Asking for volunteers. Sign-up sheets were different for me. Saying no to some things. Those have been harder lessons that I've had to learn, and some I still haven't learned, that I'm continuing to learn. So I'm going to take this time. If you want to chaperone this summer, let me know.
yeah. Okay, you're still young. Are you 24 now?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the world changes fast. So how are kids different today than even when you were in the youth group just 6 short years ago?
Yeah. So I had to really think about this one, and I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I do it justice. But there has been a lot of things that have changed just in the few years that I was in, or a few years since I've been in the youth group. So I grew up with social media. I grew up with phones. That wasn't a huge culture shock to me necessarily in any certain way. Access to that was nothing that was new to me. But what shocked me most coming into youth ministry now is kind of the sacredness of a schedule. Sundays and Wednesday nights aren't sacred anymore for anything. You can choose to fill your time with whatever you want. That can be staying home. That can be going places. I can remember times growing up where the only things you did on Sunday were church. Now, I don't remember the times where gas stations were closed and grocery stores were closed on the weekends, but I remember times where you only had church or you stayed home.
Yeah.
Right? The bowling alley might have been closed, or the movie theater might have been closed on that. But students today are busier than I've ever seen them before, right? Any time in my life. So I wanted to ask myself, kind of, when was Jesus in a rush? And I try to base it off that, and oftentimes I look at his ministry, and he was sitting down, eating a meal with people. He wasn't going through drive-thrus on the way home, right? He was sharing a meal around a table. He allowed himself to be distracted. He might have been on a mission to go this place, but he was taking another route to go heal somebody, perhaps. And in the moments that I'm rushed and my schedule is packed, I'm probably not very gracious.
Yeah.
Right? I have a sister who's 14 years younger than me, and so I got the uncle experience really young. And it's always funny when kids put their shoes on the wrong feet. Right? And you don't correct them because they're learning, but when they get in the car, you switch it for them. Right? But it's not very funny when you're in a rush and you're trying to get out the door and you're trying to get to church and they got their shoes on the wrong feet and they can't do anything right. Right? In the same moment, just being rushed doesn't allow much room for graciousness. And so I think today, when we fill our schedules up so much, I don't leave much room for graciousness and for patience in my life.
So schedules are super packed. There's opportunities galore. Give the 100-second pitch to a parent as to why it's still important to not only have their kid in church, but have them involved in the youth ministry, because those are not necessarily the same thing.
100 seconds?
Yeah, got 100 seconds.
You got your timer ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to give you a 1-second pitch first.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
1 second, free babysitting. That's what you got. That's it, 2 words. But a 100-second pitch would be, if I asked you for a show of hands now, how many of us would go back to our teenage years just because we want to do it all over again? I doubt many of us would say, hey, that's me, right? A lot of us would say, no, thank you. Those weren't very good times of my life. Being a teenager is hard. And to the teenagers in a room, I'm sure that's not very hopeful. But the good news is that it does get better, right? A lot of these people said they wouldn't go back to those years. And so it will get better.
I would go back to college in a heartbeat.
To college, right.
For sure,
yeah.
not high school.
Definitely not being a 16-year-old,
No.
Especially today. And so life is hard as a teenager. And when I was 16, I got my license and I started driving myself to the early Church of Christ, just right across town. And it was because of LTC that we just got back from this past weekend. The Goldthwaite Church of Christ.
That's over 100 seconds.
It is. This is a different part.
You're not even close.
The Goldthwaite Church of Christ that I was attending at the time, they decided that they weren't going to do LTC anymore. It is a big commitment, so I understand that. And so our family, our commitment to the church was starting to dwindle a little bit. And so after a year or so of waking up before my family and attending classes and worship at Early, my grandma asked me about the congregation at the Early Church of Christ, and she started coming. And then several months after that, the rest of my family started coming. And that's where they faithfully attend to this day, just across town from us. And so I think we would be misguided to think that the faith of teenagers don't have impact on the household, that the faith of our teenagers don't have impact on families. Youth ministry, it's good for the kid, but it's not just good for the kid. It's not just good for the church, or it's not just good for the kingdom. Youth ministry is good for the family as well.
Yeah. All right, so what's your long-term goal for your kids? I mean, you start getting them in 6th grade now. They're kind of under your purview until they graduate. What's your long-term goal, and what's some short-term goals along the way?
Well, the goals for the kids are a lot different than goals for me. The first goal is survival. Easier said than done sometimes. Yeah. I look at Pete Rose. He's in the Hall of Fame. He batted 300. So if I can bring 30% of the kids home with me from those trips, I feel pretty good about myself. Hall of Fame youth
Pete
minister.
Rose is not in the Hall of Fame because of a gambling problem,
right.
But anyway.
So I do shoot for 100%. There have been times where I take maybe 13 or 14 kids on the way there, and then I get a few miles down the road, and I have a bad feeling about it. And so I asked one of them, one time it was Hayden Klutz, and I said, Hayden, can you count how many people we got? And he said 14. Which was one more than we came with. So I don't know who hopped on the van, but I just think he counted himself twice. I'm not sure. But that is the first goal, right?
Yeah.
You want to be trusted with the kids' safety, and bringing them back home. That's a big deal to parents. If it's not, it should be. But really the main goal is for the kids to experience the kingdom here on this earth, right, and the righteousness of God. That is something we long for one day, but it's also something that we can experience here at this time. And so doing that in a safe and healthy environment as the church and as youth ministry, it is the first goal. And then to continue their faith into the next chapter of life, whether that be into college or the workforce, or to go to a young adults class, or to a congregation that doesn't have Bible classes, wherever they go next, that they continue their faith into that next chapter of life.
Yeah, and some of the themes of sticky faith are some things that we've talked about that, if you look at the stats of the number of young people that leave the church, it is depressing.
Yeah.
Right? And we want to be a part of the solution to that. So what's the major themes of your teaching? I mean, what are some things that you kind of circle back around to with your kiddos?
Yeah, I'm sure if you ask the kids what are some major themes, they could tell you better than I could, right? If they're paying attention, and I know they are. I'm gonna say a lot of the same things over and over again. A lot of the same stories. I try to spend a lot of time in the Gospels, particularly. I try to make a big emphasis on adopting a lifestyle, and that being as a higher priority than just hearing the teachings. Following the way of Jesus and not just being able to quote some of the things the words of Jesus. I think of a story that I once heard from Francis Chan, and I think you might have told me this story and know where I'm going. But
I was thinking of it as you were talking.
There's a dad, and he tells his daughter to go clean a room. And he goes off and comes back 30 minutes later, and it's not clean, spoiler. And he says, hey, what's up with this? I told you to clean your room. And she's like, yeah, I know you said those words. It's like, okay, well, go clean your room. And comes back a few hours later and says, hey, why didn't you clean your room? And she said, well, listen, hear me out. I took what you said, and I memorized it. And then he comes back a few hours later, why is the room still not clean? I took what you said, I memorized it in Greek. And I even wrote it down on a sticky note, and I put it up on my mirror. And he comes back the next day and says, hey, is your room clean now? She says, well, hear me out. Not only have I memorized it in Greek and written it down, I know when you said it, I know the context that you said it in, I know where on the page you said it in that dialogue. I got it. Okay, he comes back a few hours later, says, "Did you clean your room?" Not only that, I think if I have it memorized, then that should be good enough, right? But did you clean your room? No, I didn't clean my room, right? Doing it is half the battle.
To
right?
not be a hearer of the
Knowing
word,
it,
but to be a doer of the word.
but to be a doer of the word.
Yeah, that's good. What are some things in ministry that just fills your cup? That when your kids, when like things go right, what's the thing that you're like, yes, this has been totally worth it all?
Yeah, the kids is one of those things, right? In youth ministry, they are simultaneously filling the cup and emptying the cup, right? It's kind of a siphon effect. Van rides are a big part of that. I took some other notes too about.
Are the van rides a cup filler or a cup emptier?
I think they are a cup filler, if I could find them. Things that fill my cup. Following an itinerary. When things go according to plan, I'm sure y'all can relate to that. And then over years, watching kids spiritually grow and grow in their love for God and the church, over months and years of that really fills my cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what are things within the ministry that just put a hole in that cup?
The kids. Yeah. No.
Is their last name Havens?
No. No. Being unprepared, being less prepared than I want to be, that can be a big stressor for me. That really leads me to poking a hole in that cup, if you will. Sometimes the illustrations or the message doesn't hit the way that I want them to. And you can go home on a Wednesday night really feeling like you did nothing for that day. But Thursday still comes, right? Whether it was a good lesson or not, Thursday is always just around the corner. And I know one of the important things for teenagers is that you're there, that they have someone that's consistent in their life. And so that's one of my goals too. For the parents, safety really matters, right? Being a great role model really matters. But to the kids, just being someone that's consistent and open into their lives is good enough. So I try to use that metric, that regardless if the message was just heard and the illustration really hit home or not, that they know how I feel about them.
Have you had a kid yet misquote you or take something you said out of context and to do something like truly that isn't godly that you don't agree with? Has that happened to you yet?
Not something that truly isn't godly.
There is no pain like a kid using your words to justify bad behavior. And you're like, how did you, like, I get I said words similar to that, not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That is a unique kind of pain.
One of my teachings that I like, and I bring it up often, is this old Jewish blessing. You could use it in place of a goodbye. And they would say, may you be covered with the dust of your rabbi's sandals, right? May you follow Jesus, our rabbi, so closely that your life is affected by it. And I shared that at camp, and then was preceded, someone grabbed dust and threw it in my face.
Okay.
Yeah, there's stuff like that happens.
So
yeah.
My favorite one that's safe to tell, because I have some that are not safe to tell, but there's a young man who got up, youth minister, first year. He gives a lesson about grace. And the next day, we're literally playing a dodgeball variation at camp. And he yells to this youth minister, hey, it's okay for me to cheat at dodgeball because I'm flawless in Christ, because that was the lesson.
Right.
And he's it's okay for me to cheat now.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it isn't. Okay, so what do you do personally to stay spiritually healthy? What's some of your habits and rhythms?
Yeah, habits is a great word. I try to practice spiritual disciplines, and I try to put those on the calendar. Things like fasting and prayer and memorizing of scripture has been the biggest one for me lately. Have those things written on my heart. And the hardest one, of course, is Sabbath. Fridays is my day off in the office, and I show up most Fridays. Right? I don't take the day off. And that's something I've had to learn, and it's been frustrating to Stephanie that I don't take much time off. And that's probably a flaw of a lot of ministers, is you're always on call.
Yeah.
And there is some truth to that, and I want to be there in the times that I'm needed the most. But I know not every Friday is the time that I'm needed the most.
Yeah.
So I need to take some time off.
Yeah, I feel like some of that's my fault, so I'm feeling really bad right now.
I didn't say it.
You didn't say it. So you're still young. You're still in your first couple of years, but how long can you see yourself doing this? And are there other ministry positions, campus, associate, pulpit, that you could see yourself doing, many years from now? Because we're not
Yeah.
going to give it up for quite a while with you.
I haven't really thought much about long term. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and now I feel like I can do it forever. I'm sure I won't always feel that way, but I do feel like if I have another 16 years left in me, I'll be in my early 40s. At that point, just turned 40. You'll be over 59 and a half, so I'll just take
Barely,
your.
just a smidge.
You'll be able to pull retirement, and I'll just move into your office, I think.
I'm sure there's lots of people who are like, could you do that tomorrow?
Right.
So
That's my plan.
yeah. No, I never just every year I was like, yeah, I think I can first few years, but just at some point I was like, well, I can't do it forever, but I can do it for one more year. And I did that forever. I mean, I went to grad school and got another degree intending to change jobs. And I was like, yeah, I just really don't want to yet. And I mean, I got out of youth work, but I mean, I'm still doing ministry. No, it's great. I love it. And I'm still jealous of what you get to do, but you're the right person doing the right job, and I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah.
So where do you see the ministry here in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I started something pretty recently. I've kind of come to the conclusion and have talked to a lot of my minister friends about student leadership. I think student leadership leads to student involvement. If my job as a youth minister is to have engaging teenagers that are fruitful and that love God and love the church, there's no one that knows more about what teenagers are going through than teenagers.
Yeah.
There's no one in the world that knows what is fun to a teenager than teenagers. And so I kind of lean on their ideas and try to lean on their leadership as to how should we plan our calendar? How should we plan our lessons? What are themes that we want to talk about over the next quarter? And so in 3 to 5 years, I view our ministry being very student-driven, being very student-led, which seems like it would be easier on me.
No, it's more work.
No, it's definitely easier to just do it all and not have to depend on teenagers to help run it. But I know it'll be worth it in the long run. And their ideas are a whole lot better than mine. I have been shocked with coming to Austin Avenue, coming into youth ministry, how much I've learned. I figured I would have more time to read and do personal studies than I have. I thought that's where I was going to do my learning. If they learn half as much from me as I learn from them, it's a good time. If they're having half as much fun as I'm having, they're having a good time.
Well, but the church has modeled that for you in just the leadership opportunities that they gave you.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that's great. So church, I mean, I'm just going to be I'm going to pick up the pom-poms for just a second. I did youth ministry full-time for almost 20 years, consecutive 16 in one place. And for a young man, did we get you when you were still 22 or 23? I don't know.
I don't either.
You were young. Young men like this, they don't show up at every church everywhere. He's one in 1,000, and we are so blessed. And I'm saying this is somebody who shares an office with him, and we hang out and talk. And he does way more than just youth work. He is with me, hand in glove, doing things. But I'm saying that as a father. And so I trust you with my kids. And so I just want to pick up the pom-poms and just for the church to know that we're blessed. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned like a father. Your kids never miss an opportunity to tell me you could be my dad. They make sure I'm aware of it.
What's one last thing that you want us to know about the youth ministry here?
Gosh, there is so much. Lance gave me 17 questions, and I don't think he asked but 5 of them. So there is a lot that I could say in this time. But I want you to know that your dedication to the youth is definitely noticed. You don't have to work in a school or have previously worked in the church to be involved in that. And I am just astounded every time that I have a question from missions committee about an event we're going on, just how much this congregation backs the youth group as well. Another person that I wanted to bring up that has kind of been a mentor of mine is Tony Salazar. He is in the youth group class every single Sunday. And one of the first things that he told me when he got there was, I'm not like the principal in the room that's watching down your throat. And he asked me to treat him like one of the kids, right? If there was a question that came up, to ask him as well. And I've learned so much from that, and he's just been a great example for me. And sometimes when the class is getting a little wild, and I say something that I think is profound and they don't hear it, a little nod from the back of the room from Tony really makes my day.
Yeah.
And so I'm just glad to have elderships that are as invested in even what could be considered the JV ministries of youth ministries in other churches. But we feel like the varsity ministry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next week we're doing benevolence, so come back for that. We are dismissed. Thank you.
Thank y'all.